those that are really young enough to remember the wonderful swinging 60s, of course, a few of you do on this channel, I know, we're all of it. I don't, believe it or not, but I've read a lot about it, of course. People say, don't they, I've interviewed so many people from the likes of the beautiful Twiggy to all sorts of manner of people that were literally at the epicenter of London swinging 60s. They said it was a brilliant time to be young, alive and free. Yes, and of course there were so many firsts in that particular era, were there not? Including the very first BBC commercial radio station. That's right, wonderful, fabulous Radio 1, BBC Radio 1, with of course Tony Blackburn, who I've worked with on many occasions, literally playing the very first record on the station. It's funny though, isn't it, because this was apparently our station, if you like, and for many years Radio 1 really ruled the airwaves until the advent, of course, of commercial stations up and down the United Kingdom, and now of course we can get anything, any music at any time. But really the BBC are in hot water once again, seemingly because as it's funded by a tax, whichever way you look at it, it is a tax. Well, they're simply not giving the public what they want. Now here's where it gets really tricky, because of course this particular record in fact is, well, shall we say, featuring the current British Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Sir Keir Starmer. And again, here's where it gets interesting, because a particular group, a pop group, whatever you want to call them, have come together to make a sort of record in their stance regarding the axing of the winter fuel allowance for, of course, the OAPs over here in the United Kingdom. And what's good about this is it's now shot to #1 in the iTunes chart. And that's all because the public have decided they like this message and this song. It's basically put to the, a new sort of phrasing, lyrics, whatever you want to call it, to the wonderful pop song by Mud called, of course, Lonely This Christmas. A fun song, but with a very, very important message. Now, the BBC have decided that they're not going to be playing this record, even though the public demand that this is what they want to hear. Apparently, they say they're not playing it because it's simply too political. Well, it's strange, isn't it? Because when you think back, of course, they decided to ban Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood way back in the 80s, and that shot to #1 and stayed there for weeks. And then they had to capitulate and, of course, play the record. But even further back in the 70s, they had the Strawbs, right, with a very political song called Part of the Union. And they played that, well, constantly. So what's changed? Well, apparently the wokerati that basically now run the BBC have said, no, we're not backing down, we're not doing it, we don't care what the public think, we're not simply playing it. Now, when you consider that, well, I alone, in fact, have had several letters from the BBC basically claiming I owe licence fee, even though I keep telling them I don't have a television and I don't watch their programmes, they won't give in. Imagine how much money they could save if they stopped sending out these ridiculous letters, even though you've told them time and time again. But of course, it's your money. That for how much longer when they completely ignore the will of the public? And the will of the public have decided that this is definitely the Christmas anthem for all of those people that the current British government, headed by Sir Keir Starmer, are leaving freezing this Christmas. What do you think? Neil Sean in the very heart of London.